All right, the next step's pretty simple. This is along the same lines as what we did with the barn board with the spatter and drag, except this time we're not going to drag it. We're just going to spatter it. So if we were in a situation where we were doing this in an actual theater on theater scale with theater paint and all of that, we'd actually mix up some containers of paint. But when you're doing a spatter, you want to do a fairly watery sort of paint. Although the wetter the paint, I think the wetter the paint, the finer the spatter, and the thicker the paint, the heavier the spatter, if I recall correctly. So you can do this either with your brush. Like I said, you can just like pluck at the bristles of the brush. If you're doing this in the actual theater, I would do this by taking the brush and just hitting it on the back of my hand or on the side of my hand like this. And that starts to throw paint around. In your own house, that's maybe not such a great idea because you'll start to get paint on things. In the theater, it's a little easier to control, or at least to be somewhere where it doesn't matter that you didn't control it. So here again, I am going to defer to the toothbrush. So I'm going to try to get this toothbrush full of some of this white paint. And then I'm just going to flick. Yeah, that's not really thick enough. I'm not getting enough color yet. Sample it off to the side, make sure it's doing what you want it to do. And then you can start getting some of that white spatter on your brick. This gives it that porous masonry texture. So this is what's making it look like it's brick and not just a flat, smooth surface. Typically, I think of us as needing, as wanting more spatter than we would otherwise think we need. I find that usually more spatter looks better, and your white is definitely going to dry a little bit more subtle than what it goes on in all likelihood. I shouldn't say definitely, but so I like to get a pretty good coat of white spatter on there, and then I'm going to rinse off my toothbrush here. Figure out what I did with my rag. Try to get it dried out again. Get that white off of it. If your spatter brush, whatever you're using for spatter, has too much of the previous color in it, then you end up just with kind of a medium gray spatter that frequently doesn't do you much good. But now I'm going to go back in after I've got the white, and I'm going to hit it with some black. The black is not going to show up as prominently as the white does in all likelihood. And so I typically find that I'm doing about, I don't know, if I had to put a number on it, I'd say I'm doing 25%, 50% more black spatter than I am white spatter. Maybe not quite that much, but and I'm getting definitely some thicker dots than I would, if we're thinking about this in scale, there's definitely some thicker dots on here than I would expect to have on an actual scene painting flat. But the cohesive properties of water kind of are what they are, no matter what scale you're working on. So it's a little harder to get that finer mist on here. And this can come and go a little bit. There can be areas that have more or less, but in general, you want to keep this fairly even. You don't want to have areas that are way heavy and way light. So, so once you have everything spattered, go ahead and check in, and we'll give you the next assignment.